For the second summer in a row, North Carolina adds a late summer front court player. This year, it's Georgia Tech transfer Tyzhaun Claude. Can he add more to the rotation than James Okonkwo did last year?
You are Locked On Tarheels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? It's Wednesday, September 4th, 2024. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Schade, joined today by our good buddy, Coach Pat Kilby, and you've joined us at the place to get your Tar Heels content every single day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We want to thank you for making us your first listen or watch, and send a special shout out to all you everydayers out there and all the members of the Locked On Tar Heels Discord, as well as our brand new Locked On Tar Heels Insiders. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Hard to believe that NFL is here. Pack tomorrow is the first game. Wild stuff. As we record this, I've got a fantasy draft tonight. As the show airs, it's already happened. I'm sure my team's going to be terrible because it usually is. Coming up on the show today, Pack, you and I were just talking about this. It's hard to believe it, but this is week 10 of our summer roster preview series. We've done the 3 freshmen, the sophomores, all the juniors, both the returners and the transfers, and now we move on to the 3 super seniors. That'll be RJ Davis, Jalen Withers, and today we start this whole thing with Tyzhaun Claude. So what we're talking about is getting to know this transfer. Can he be part of Carolina's rotation? His strengths, weaknesses, bold predictions, and more, all coming up today. So, Pack, as we always do, why don't you hit us with Tyzhaun's bio blast?
Yeah, you bet. So Tyzhaun Claude, listed on the official roster as Ty, originally from Goldsboro, North Carolina, which also is the hometown of Kobe White.
Yes, sir.
This is his 6th year in college, so he's a grad senior. His previous schools, Morehead State from 2019 to 2022, Western Carolina from 22 to 23, and Georgia Tech 23 to 24. Position, he's a forward, 6'7", 230 pounds, got a really good frame on him. Jersey number 0. He's been 0 everywhere except for Georgia Tech. Twitter, Ty Claude 0. Instagram, Tyzhaun 0. I think we can give this an 8 out of 10.
Yeah, I think that's pretty close to what we're looking for.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's look at his stats here, 2023-24 stats. 32 games played, 4 games started, 17.5 minutes per game, 4.8 points per game, 5.2 rebounds per game, 2.4 offense, 2.7 defense, 0.7 assists per game, 0.8 turnovers per game, 0.4 blocks, and 0.3 steals per game. He is 49.5% from the field on 51 of 103 attempts, 52.1% from 2 on 50 of 96 shooting, 3 attempts per game, 14.3% from the 3-point line, 1 for 7 from 3, which isn't great. 0.2 attempts per game. Free throw percentage 66.2. 49 of 74 total, and 2.3 attempts per game.
Tyzhaun Claude, not a shooter. I think that's what we learned right out of the gate there, Pat Kilby. I've got a trivia question for you, sir, about Ty Claude's jersey number. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
How many players in Carolina history have previously worn number 0? How many? And see who you can name out of that bunch.
Oh, geez. Seth wore 0.
He did before transitioning to 7. That's right.
Yeah. Nate Britt, I believe, wore 0.
Bingo.
Time. Man, Eric Montross was 00.
There you go. Don't get that backwards. We're only talking single 0 here.
Yeah, I don't remember a ton of zeros. I'm sure there's a couple I'm missing, so I'm going to say that he's the 5th one to wear 0.
You are so close. He is the 7th. There have been 6 previous to him. You got 2. The 2 that you got were correct. Both Nate Britt, and Seth Trimble. The others are Jesse Holly, Joel James, 7th Woods, and Anthony Harris. So all pretty recent years. Jesse Holly being the first to do so. And yes, you're correct about Big Eric Montross wearing 00. There was one other 00 player. Pack, do you remember who that was?
Another
big man, one of the best shot blockers in Carolina history.
Was it Brendan Haywood?
It was Brendan Haywood. Very well done, brother. So yes, Tyzhaun Claude will be the 7th Tar Heel to wear the 0 jersey number. Great job with that. All right, Pack, you talked about it earlier. In Tyzhaun Claude's history, this will be now his 4th school. Was at Morehead State for 3 years, but within there, missed all of 21-22, only played 9 games the next year, so we can kind of get rid of that. He's really only played 3 years of college basketball and one at each school that he's been at. I know there are times when that's an issue and a concern that somebody's just been jumping around the block, right? Is it a concern to you that this is Tyzhaun Claude's 4th school, or is it just like, yeah, sometimes we just get that in this transfer portal era?
Yeah, I think sometimes you just kind of get that. This one doesn't seem concerning. For me, I think obviously his time at Morehead State was pretty injury riddled, so that probably affected his experience there. And then, he had a great year at Western Carolina, which was awesome. And from there, he made a jump to a Power 5 school. So
it's like he parlayed that into making that leap. Yeah.
Yeah. And you don't blame him for that. And then he's turned Georgia Tech into Carolina, which you also don't blame him for that. So I think when I look at it, I just see exactly what we just talked about. A kid that's, battled some injuries, but also done a great job where he's been and taking advantage of those opportunities. And I don't fault him for that at all.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of why the transfer portal exists, is so that you can climb up through the ranks if it makes sense for you to do so. So good for him on being able to do so. And Pack, his breakout year, I know we were given his stats from last year at Georgia Tech, which is probably going to be the most analogous to what he'll be able to do at Carolina this year. But his breakout year was really his redshirt junior year at Western Carolina, as you just mentioned, that he was able to use to eventually get to Georgia Tech. 15.4 points a game, 8.6 rebounds, and just shy of a block a game. And so that was the year that he really popped off. And when we see that with injuries, it's like the year after the year that you get injured where you really, really go off. And so then last year did some stuff at Georgia Tech, wasn't a starter by any stretch of the imagination. But here's my next question for you, Pack. From what you've seen and watched and witnessed about Tyzhaun Claude so far, will he be this year's James Okonkwo? And here's what I mean by that. Obviously, the timeline is the same. A front court player coming late in the summer to the team. But with Okonkwo, didn't really play, right? Like 2.9 minutes, a game last year. And so, yes or no, do you think he's this year's James Okonkwo?
I do not.
Why so?
Well, for one, I think our front court is different this year. There's just more opportunity for our front court players. So I think that you got to factor that into it. But I also just think he's better than he was. Ty is, and so
Ty better than Okonkwo. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, Ty is better than him. And Ty's got some great things that he can add to this team. In particular, his rebounding ability, his frame. He sets really good screens. He has decent vision. So he's got some things that he brings to the table. Now, will it look like it did at Western Carolina? Will that be his stat line? No. But I think he's going to be able to give us, 8 to 12 minutes a game and be a player for us.
That many? You legitimately think he'll play 8 to 12 minutes a game?
I do. I really do. Yeah. At least early. I think there's so much that's got to be determined. He's going to get an opportunity. And so these guys that capitalize on it can earn that consistently. So I really do think that he's going to get some, 8 to 12 minutes early for sure.
Well, especially with Zayden High now not in the mix, right? Like there's more minutes that open up. And I, we don't know how many minutes Zayden would have had this year, but those minutes, however many they would have been, got to be distributed somewhere. And I think probably gobbled up by multiple front court players. And it seems like Ty Claude is probably one of them. And so I like that it's another depth insurance ad in the front court, right? Like if Jay Wash gets hurt or I don't know what, Ven-Allen Lubin, whatever it is. But I think I'm with you. I think that it can be more than solely depth or insurance pack. So we're going to get into more of why that is. We want to talk about Ty Claude's strengths and weaknesses and what he can bring to this team and what he needs to grow. And we're going to do that coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about eBay Motors, passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers to roof racks, exhaust kits to LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed or power or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. 22 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you get your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. So with all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. The summer roster preview series rolls on here on Locked On Tar Heels. We are less than 9 weeks away from the first tip of the season on November 4th. Today, we're talking about Tyzhaun Claude, the Georgia Tech transfer, and the latest scholarship addition to this roster. Pack, we move next into his strengths and weaknesses. Where do you want to start? Which side? You want to go? We usually go strengths and weaknesses. You want to keep that or go the other way? Your choice.
We can mix it up. Let's go with our weaknesses first.
Oh, baby, I like it. We're shaking things up. All right. What do you got on the things that Ty Claude needs to grow in?
Yeah, so for me, I think, and it's pretty clear when we went through the stats earlier, he's got to become a better shooter. And it's not that we're going to ask him to shoot a ton. But he's got to be able to capitalize on those things like we've seen in the past. It has to be something the defense is, at least respecting. And what that would do for the rest of his game, what it would open up for him if he does, develop a decent 15-footer or even three-point shot would be huge. And most importantly, I think he's got to be better from the free throw line because we're all expecting him to go in there and be a banger and get clean up points and offensive rebounds and attack the rim strong. And so if he's going to be doing those things, he's going to be at the free throw line. And he needs to be able to capitalize there better than what he has in the past.
A weakness for me, Pack, is the fact that he's, quote, only 6'7". And I say that as somebody who's legitimately only 5'11". I know that's not your plight in life. You're 6'5"?
Yeah.
That's so insane. Pack and I have never actually met in person, folks, for those of you who don't know. And so it was wild the day when I found out how tall this man is. So when we finally do, I'm going to be just looking up to him. Yes, sir, Mr. Kilby. Nice to meet you in person. Anyway, so Tyzhaun Claude is only 2 inches taller than Pack. But Pack, how much do you weigh?
230.
Do you really? So you guys are the same size.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you got some weight that you can throw around in the ACC?
I don't know if I'm ready for that, he does.
He does. And the thing, so the question is, can that weight make up for the lack of height? Because look, this is the ACC, and I know there have been this is the same height as who am I thinking about? His name is not coming to my head, from Miami that just went to Baylor.
Norchad.
Thank you. Norchad Omier. Yeah. Is 6'7". He's like 6'7", 240, but so it's that same height. But man, when you go against some of these bigger dudes, that is a potential issue for Carolina, especially since there's just not a ton of height throughout the front court. If he was a change of pace front court guy that was a little bit shorter, you look at that, but it's not just him. It's also Ven-Allen Lubin and stuff like that, where we're a little bit undersized at that position. And so that to me is something which I know that's not a weakness he can grow in although he literally can grow. But I think that's something to watch for. Pack, any other weaknesses that you see?
I think another thing is just, guarding multiple positions. Like you just kind of mentioned, he's 6'7", but he's a bigger, stockier, strong body frame. So can he move laterally well enough? Those are some concerns for me. Not necessarily calling it a weakness yet, just question marks.
Something to watch for. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that pretty much covers it for his weaknesses.
One thing that I'm curious to just see, one other, like, keep an eye on, is the joining the team late factor of it. It's really hard to build in as much chemistry. If I've got the timeline right in my head, Pat, correct me if I'm wrong, he didn't commit until after the Outer Banks trip that the rest of the team took. Is that right? Am I remembering that correctly?
No, that's right. Yeah. It was
And so, like, we all have been on those kind of trips in our lives, whether it's a team bonding thing or just with family or friends or whatever. Man, there's just a level of connectivity you build when you have those moments together. And so the fact that Ty is going to have to try to build in that trust, those inside jokes that the rest of the team's going to have that he's not going to be part of, right? That's just hard to build at the same level when you don't get to go on that. And so he needs to be, in my opinion, very intentional about how he ingratiates himself to the rest of the team. Hey, could we go get lunch? Hey, let's go on a quick road trip, whatever it is, to try to make up for some of that. I don't expect him to be a negative chemistry person. That's not what I'm saying at all. I don't think Hubert Davis would bring him in if he was. I'm just saying it's hard to get to that same level of chemistry that everybody else has. Does that difference make sense to you, Pat?
100%. Yeah. He's got to be very intentional with his time and how he, hits the ground running, and as far as developing relationships and things go. But yeah, for sure. And so sounds like Hubert, though, is very intentional. Actually doesn't sound like, we know that he's intentional.
That's right.
Building team relationships and camaraderie. So he's going to have more opportunity to do that. He just needs to capitalize on it.
Let's turn our attention to strengths. Pack, you said that shooting is an area of growth. If that's the case, because basketball is actually all about scoring for those who are unaware. I don't know if you know that. You actually have to score more points than the other team to win. What are some of the strengths then of Tyzhaun Claude? How is he going to contribute to this team?
Yeah, I think his biggest strength for at least in my opinion, is his ability to rebound.
Yeah, I agree.
And not just rebound, but he, I watch him on film. He's got some really good intangibles about pushing bodies underneath the basket. Being 6'7", we look at that as big, but he's got a lower center of gravity compared to these other guys. So he's able to kind of get low and push people underneath the basket and use his frame and his strength to take advantage of rebounding opportunities. And he's got kind of a knack for that, and he does that really well. So I think offensively, he finishes around the rim pretty well. I love the way he attacks the rim. He's very aggressive. He's one of those guys, when he dunks it, I mean, he really pulls on that rim, and he's going with a purpose. You can tell that for sure.
Yeah.
That's a strength of his. And I think for us, a thing that he's going to do really well is just be able to provide a big, strong body that you're not going to be able to just walk to the rim and post him up. I think he brings some physicality to the team that's much needed. And lastly, he's pretty good in the pick and roll game. He sets really good screens, and he uses his body very well and precisely on his rolls. You go watch his footage from Georgia Tech, which Stoudemire there, he started running a lot of ball screen stuff in his time at Georgia Tech. And I think Tyzhaun Claude really benefited from that. And that's a strong suit of his. And so I watch for him to be involved in some of Hubert's pick and roll stuff, because I think he does that really well.
Yeah, to put some numbers to the rebounding that Pack was just talking about, folks. Last year, his offensive rebounding percentage at Georgia Tech was 15.7. He's got a career offensive rebounding percentage of 13.6%. Last year, either of those numbers would have led Carolina's rotation. Armando was second in terms of rotation players at 11.3%. Wash was 11.6%. So last year's 15.7% would have led Carolina's main rotation in terms of offensive rebounding percentage. He's a little bit lower than Mondo would have been in defensive rebounding position, but in the same playground. And then total rebounding percentage, same kind of thing. Armando last year, 18.1%. Wash last year, 16.5%. Tyzhaun Claude for his career is a 17.1% total rebound percentage player. And so, look, he is obviously shorter than both of those guys, but as Pac said, he uses his body well, and that matters. Like, I haven't played organized basketball in a long time, but because I know how to use my hips and my butt, I'm a good rebounder despite my size. And the same is true. If you know how to use your body well and positioning and things like that, that's how part of how you can do it. And obviously I'm saying that, and I'm sitting here talking with a coach who can tell you infinitely more about it. But I mean, I just speak from experience on that and know from watching these guys. Pac, let me mention two other strengths that I quickly notice. We talk about potentially a weakness is his height, but his weight is a strength, in my opinion. For example, Jalen Washington is 3 inches taller, but only 5 pounds heavier. Ty Claude is stout, and Carolina needs that from him. We talked about Norchad Omier, right? Like, same kind of thing. Undersized, but knows how to use his weight well. And so was a very highly productive ACC basketball center for the past 2 years for Miami. So that's a thing. And then I think experience is the other thing. Yes, as we said, we got to figure out what the chemistry is like. But if he can utilize his experience to help this team, that could be big. Remember, as Pac said earlier, this is his 6th year in college coming up this year on multiple different teams where there's no hint or report that we've gotten of him having any troubles as the reason for him moving on. And so I think there is something he can do to help in terms of experience and what he brings to a team. Pac, anything else on any of that we've talked about?
No, I think you nailed it.
Okay, perfect. Then let's not belabor the point. Pac, we still got one more segment. We want to talk about what role do we actually expect for Tyzhaun Claude? Where will he be on the depth chart for Carolina? And you know we got to make some bold predictions for this dude. All of that coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about FanDuel. Look, you've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel. They're one of our best sponsors here on the network. It's America's #1 sportsbook. And usually this whole summer, I've been filling you in on getting a daily boost or a bonus from FanDuel. Well, now I've got something a little different for you. Right now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. Hopped on FanDuel literally right before Pac and I started recording. Look at Carolina's line against Charlotte this upcoming weekend. Carolina is a 21.5-point favorite at home with an over-under of 47.5. I cannot tell you the last time probably that a game featuring the North Carolina Tar Heels had an over-under of just 47.5. So if you want to get in on any of that action, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. We've talked some, Pac, about our expected minutes per game for Ty Claude or kind of some of what he'll do, but let's get very specific with it now. Let's not beat around the bush on that anymore. What do you expect his place on the depth chart will be? And when he's in the game, what do you expect Hubert Davis will say, Ty, I need you to do this?
Yeah, I think, man, I think with the depth chart, I think there's an argument to be made for 9. I think most people would probably settle at 10.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to make the argument for 9.
Okay.
I just think, so when you look at the depth chart, we know we got RJ and Elliot in the backcourt. We know we got Ian, Drake, Seth running that 2-3 spot. We know we've got Ven-Allen Lubin, Cade Tyson, Wash kind of manning the front court. And then you start to look.
So that leaves us with, to wrap it up for everyone so you can make your point here, that leaves us scholarship-wise with Ty Claude, Jay Witt, and James Brown.
Yep. And I think for sure he's going to be more valuable this season than James Brown. And I would argue he's better than Jay Witt. And I'm not knocking Jay Witt here. I just like what Ty Claude brings. I think his floor is higher. And you guys have heard me talk a lot about that. And I just think that's really important from a coach's perspective. Jay Witt could go out and knock it out of the park, or he could bring you way down. Like, he has there's just a really big gap. You kind of just don't know what you're going to get. And where Ty Claude, I feel like, hey, we know we're going to get physicality. We're going to get some rebounding. We're going to get a guy that doesn't mind playing a tough cleanup role. He's going to get out there and compete, and he can do that for 8 to 10 minutes a game, and we can rock with that. So I think, for me, I like him at the 9 spot better, but I think most people would probably settle, having him as 10th on the depth chart. But as far as the second part of that question, the role that I expect him to have, that's kind of what I just touched on. I think he's going to be a banger. He's going to be a bruiser. He's going to get in there and rebound really well and try to provide some physicality defensively, push some people around, wear some people down, give Jay Wash a spell, potentially give Ven-Allen Lubin a spell, and oddly enough, I really think he's going to play mostly the 5. I don't really foresee him playing a lot of 4.
I don't either.
And I don't see him touching the 3, even though 7. That's just not his style. I project him to play a lot of 5, and I think that he'll play a role for us for sure.
Yeah. Pac, I'm right in that same neighborhood in terms of the depth chart. I do have him at 10th behind Jalen Withers, at least early season for sure, because I think part of that factors in Jay Witt having been in the program for a while, Claude, as we talked about earlier, coming in late. I think that Jay Witt has a leg up on him, but boy, do I hear what you are saying about the wide variety of outcomes of what Jay Witt brings to the table and the potential of Claude to be a more consistent player, even though they've both played a lot of college basketball and been in college a long time. If Tyzhaun Claude can be consistent, and if Jalen Withers continues to be up and down like he was last year, I think what you said has a lot of validity to it. So we'll have to be interested to see. Obviously, our hope is that these dudes are battling like crazy. Jalen Withers is equally as consistent as we hope he can be, and that would be great. So we'll have to see. In terms of role, I think this is going to be front court by committee in a lot of ways. Like the Patriots of the Belichick era were always running back by committee. This is front court by committee, in my opinion. I think you just keep working until you figure out who works, and that might change, honestly, Pac, from game to game to game. We're just going to have to wait and see, but it's not like you got Armando, let's roll, right? It's just you got to figure out what you got. And this dude just needs to come in, as you said, bang, and rebound like crazy. Before we make our bold predictions, Pac, what do you think about in terms of a floor and a ceiling for Ty Claude?
Yeah, I think, the floor really for me is like that he's, the 10th guy, and that he's, basically playing when we're up 20, down 20, but I think the ceiling is exactly what we just talked about, that he's a role player, and that he brings some value on the glass, that he brings some value in his physicality and in the way that he plays the game. In the pick and roll game, I think he can bring some value, like I touched on. So, but I think the ceiling is never above, just being a solid, consistent role player for the team. Yeah. And hey, though, we need that. So if he hits his ceiling, that is a major, major win for us.
Yeah, that's a great point, because it's like, let the backcourt cook and you just support it, right? Like that is a big part of what most of the front court guys are needed for this year. Yeah, in terms of floor, the only thing I'll say is I had initially said 11th in the rotation as a floor, playing only in mop-up duty and even behind James Brown. But the more I think about it, Pac, I just don't see that because of the heft that he brings, and Carolina is just going to need that ability to get in there and bang around in the post, and Ty Claude obviously brings that. So yeah, I'm with you. I think his floor is 10th in the rotation. What about some bold predictions? This is something, folks, we always do, that is like, bold is supposed to be more likely to not happen than to happen. So if you hear us say these bold predictions and you're like, no way, Pac, you're an idiot, or Isaac, what are you talking about? That's not going to happen. Then we have done our job with bold predictions, because that's exactly what your response should be. Pac Kilby, give me a bold prediction for Ty Claude.
I don't know if you're going to call this bold enough or not, but I think that he's going to average 12 minutes per game. And I know I touched on that a little bit earlier, but I think that what you touched on earlier about back or front court by committee, I think that's a thing. I think he's going to play a lot more than people think. I've got him at 12 minutes per game.
Wow. I think that's bold enough because that seems very unlikely to me. Like I know he got 17 a game last year at Georgia Tech. But like last year for North Carolina, Jalen Withers played 12 a game and he got the 7th most minutes on the team. So I think that's plenty bold. Like basically 12 minutes a game would put him 7th, 8th on the depth chart. So yeah, I'll give that bold status pack out of 10, maybe like an 8, because it's not like otherworldly silly bold, but I think it's plenty bold. Mine is going to be that mine's less minutes and more like stat production. So it would be works his way into 8th on the depth chart and up to 6 points and 6 rebounds a game. So I think that would mean him doing basically what you said. It's like combining your minutes and my production, I think would be a bold prediction. So 8th on the depth chart, which I think is wild, but this is bold, and averaging 6 points and 6 rebounds a game.
Boy, if we get that from him, I'll be
Yeah, and that's, friends, why we call it bold. We'd love to hear your bold predictions for Tyzhaun Claude and the rest of the Tar Heels. All right, Pack, that wraps it up for today's show. We've only got 2 more scholarship players left, as we talked about earlier, Jalen Withers and the reigning ACC Player of the Year, RJ Davis. And we're going to get to the Biscuit Boys the week after that as well. If you haven't subscribed yet to Locked On Tar Heels, please make sure you do so you don't miss a second of all our great content. While you're doing that, make sure you hit the bell notification so you get notified when I go live after the football games in our postcasts, or once we get to basketball season, live after those as well. You're not going to want to miss out on that. If you're not part of the Locked On, and we'd love to have you there. It's a place where we're having Carolina conversations and more all day, every day. It's free to join, and the link for that is in the show notes. We'd love to have you. Also, there's a brand new thing called Locked On Tar Heels Insider, where you get to be in a one-on-one direct texting relationship with me. You get access to all of my stats and data and charts and all that stuff. It's free for everyone to check out for 14 days, for 2 weeks, and then it's just $5 a month after that. We'd love to have you come be part of that program. All right, guys, you know that it's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. We'll be back with you tomorrow. But until then, peace.